Good afternoon. Thank you to all those that joined us yesterday at our Cargill Blair, Nebraska Bio Refinery for the tour that we were able to put on with our great co-location partner there, Novanesis. We're excited to talk to you today about the unique role that Cargill plays in bringing together the farmer, grain processing, and downstream bioproducers to power the bioeconomy here in the great state of Nebraska and across the U.S., specifically the Midwest. I'll start with some brief introductions, myself, and then we'll get Sarah introduced here. So my name's Josh Witt. I have the great opportunity to lead our co-location business. I'll talk a little bit about this later. We have 8 co-location partners we have the opportunity to work literally right alongside with across our U.S. corn wet mills. I'm also honored to have the ability to meet with many of the bright people in this room to work to develop those next partnerships at our U.S. corn wet mills. I've been at Cargill for a little over 10 years, variety of sales and sales management roles prior to this, and came from the chemical industry prior to my time at Cargill. So I mentioned our co-location business. Our co-location business reports into Sarah's industrial business. So Sarah Jelken, Vice President of our industrial business at Cargill. Number of businesses under her leadership, things like our acidulants or citric acid business, industrial starch. We've got a chemicals business at Eddyville, Iowa, our chlor-alkali business. But most importantly, obviously, the co-location business is her favorite, I think. Certainly mine. She's got a diverse background, a really cool background. I think about, Sarah and I have had the opportunity to work together for a couple of years now. She worked for the UN in Africa, delivering global food solutions. She's on the board of a great organization, the Plant-Based Products Council. And so I've learned a lot from Sarah, and I know she's a key voice and a unique voice in how we power this bioeconomy and move it forward. So we're excited to meet you over the next couple of days. And as mentioned, our talk today will focus on how we're advancing the bioeconomy right here in the Midwest. I thought Renee gave a great presentation this morning, so we're lucky we work alongside Novanesis at our Cargill Blair site. He talked a lot about nature. Some of these biosolutions. As humans, we've relied on biological processes since the beginning of time. It's not new. Advances in fermentation, yield increases, the ability to sequence and genetically modify microorganisms have already delivered a lot to the space, and we're excited about where it can go in the future when you think about unleashing nature. There's probably not a better site to talk about than Blair, Nebraska, which we'll get into a little bit. But first, Cargill. So Cargill's mission, plain and simple, is to nourish the world in a safe, responsible, and sustainable way. We're really proud of our 159-year history. So we bring that history together with new insights, new technologies, to really be a partner or a trusted partner of choice in a variety of markets: food and beverage, agriculture, financial, and importantly, industrial and bioindustrial. We've got 160,000 employees over 70 countries. So when we think about global impact, we're positioned to do that. We bring these 160,000 employees spread all over the world to bring together these unique ideas and insights. Okay, so that's a little bit about Cargill. You might be wondering, all right, we've talked about Cargill, we've talked about Blair. Where does the Blair plant fit in the big world of Cargill? So it fits in our starches and sweeteners business. This is a North American business that has 15 production facilities. I grew up in north central Iowa. Corn is near and dear to my heart, but we process a variety of botanicals: corn, soy, wheat, sugar, stevia, for those of you that have seen it in your favorite food or beverage. And bringing these different botanicals to market, we have the opportunity to serve over 1,400 customers. So I'd like to move in specifically to Blair. Maybe. There we are. So we've got a nice aerial shot of Blair here. Blair was built in 1995. At the time, it was one of Cargill's largest investments, $200 million. You'd be talking well over $2 billion today when you think about replacement. We grind 350,000 bushels of corn at Blair every single day. So for those of you not in the U.S. or not from the U.S., we love our bushel term. So we had Renee holding up the ear of corn this morning. Think 56 pounds in a bushel. We grind 350,000 bushels of corn every day. Renee offered up the 400 trucks in and out facility. I'd challenge him to even go higher if he's out there somewhere. But 400, 500 trucks every day in and out of our facility. And the analogy I always like to think about from an American football standpoint is if you think about an acre of corn, being about the size of an American football field, we're processing 2,300 American football fields on a daily basis. So you think about back to 1995, we've seen 9 different expansions at Blair. And the exciting part about this is it's all driven by our customer growth. I'm going to talk about something that's really special to me, something I'm passionate about, our co-location business, but it's also been driven by expansions that our food and beverage customers have asked for. One I mentioned earlier that we're really excited about is our EverSweet product. So this is a stevia product, a non-caloric sweetener produced via fermentation in Blair. So I mentioned our co-location business. 4 co-location partners today at Blair: Corbion, Avonic, NatureWorks, and Novanesis. We treat these relationships very seriously. They're near and dear to our heart. The term or phrase we use inside Cargill is it's a marriage. It's a long-term relationship. When we're partnering partnering with a company on site, it's for decades and decades and decades. These aren't 1 or 2 year contracts. And so the co-location relationship simply is, we work together with these great companies. Literally, we'll pipe over feedstock. Many times it's dextrose. We also will provide utilities. Steam will help process wastewater. And overall, it just provides a really unique opportunity to bring solutions at scale to the marketplace. And so we're honored to work alongside these great companies. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention our great co-location partner, CJ, in Fort Dodge, Iowa. I see Luke Palmer with us today. It's one more on the path to the 8 that we have the opportunity to serve today. So that's a little bit about Blair. Important to recognize that none of this happens without the farmer. And so I'm going to turn it over to Sarah now to talk about our partnership with the farmer on regenerative ag practices.
Hello. He did a really nice introduction of me, and it kind of made me feel, I blushed a little bit. It's not as impressive as he made it sound, but I'm really excited to be here, and part of it is because when I look around this room and being here today, I see a lot of people that I consider friends now in the industry, people that I've gotten to know over the years, some only weeks, some months, some decades in some cases. And it's always fun to be together, and it's fun to make new friends and relationships, because when we talk about the bioeconomy, it takes all of us, and it takes entire industries, new industries. All of us are a big part of that ecosystem, and so it's just energizing to be here and be working together on this. So it's one of my favorite parts of the job. Josh talked a little bit about the fact that I've been at Cargill 16 years now, and a lot of my time at Cargill has actually been in farmer-facing roles. So at the end of the day, I started out as a grain merchant, buying grain from farmers, working on the farm, and one of my favorite things today is still that I get to spend time out in the field, walking the farm. I mean, it's kind of harvest time, right in the middle. I don't know exactly with Nebraska, I'm up in Minnesota, but it is bean time in the Midwest right now, and people are going. And I mean, down in Missouri, though, it's running and corn is coming in, and so it's like the Super Bowl, right? It's this exciting time. You're getting in the field, seeing how the crops look, et cetera. And I know we're going to hear more, I think, from the panel after this, so I won't get into it too much. But I want to talk a little bit about why that's so important when we talk about the bioeconomy and when we talk about things that are renewable. And so I am going to talk a little bit about that. And one example, and I've seen a couple presentations today that do reference that. But I want to call out the fact that when we look at dextrose coming out of our Blair facility, and you think about that life cycle, people have talked about scope 1, 2, 3. When you think about corn as a feedstock for dextrose, in our life cycle analysis, 60% of the carbon comes from the raw material. So I think it's really important that people understand no matter what you do with the energy in the plant, no matter how you do the sugar, the refinement, et cetera, if you don't tackle the fact that the raw material is over 60% of that carbon footprint or intensity, you're not going to make a dent at the end of the day. And so this furthest out piece of this, the part that we don't actually necessarily directly influence, is actually the biggest piece of it when it comes down to what we do. We can do everything we want in our plant to hit those kind of reduction goals, but actually when you think about scope 3, that's going to be what your biggest impact is. So very interesting to think about for Cargill. And what it comes down to is really healthy soil. So I know there were some presentations earlier that talked about that. You think about cover crops, you think about keeping roots long term, you think about biodiversity. These elements creating that healthy soil is what you achieve. And so now I'm going to try to advance it. Let's see. Okay, perfect. And when I think about that, I think about the 3 things that are in the bottom left of the slide. Climate change, water resources, farm livelihoods, and healthy soil plays into all of that together. So when you think about it from a climate change perspective, you're really thinking about capturing that carbon, right, in the environment. When you talk about water resources, you're talking about purification and holding on to that. And when you think about farmer livelihood, this is soil that's more drought resistant, right, more economically viable. And so really having healthy soil is a win-win for everyone. The good news is it can actually be more profitable. So not only can it be good for the environment and what we need for the bioeconomy, but it can also be profitable for farmers. And so this is why I had to bring notes up, because I could not memorize these statistics. As hard as I tried, there are too many numbers, and I really wanted to share. So the Soil Health Institute showed that for customers who use the regenerative agriculture, these are some examples of what they achieved. 97% of farmers that were surveyed reported increased crop resilience to extreme weather, okay? So having this healthy soil, doing these practices, 97%. 85% reported net income increased for corn, 88% for soybeans, so even better there. Net income, okay, bottom line. 67% reported a higher yield than their conventional systems, and it reduced the average cost to grow corn by $24 an acre, and for soybeans by $17 an acre. So when you think about this, it's a win-win, right? What is there not to love, right? It's what we need, and then it's also profitable. But the truth is, there are so many challenges to achieving this. It is not easy at all. It is not easy. And when you spend time on farm, or when you see the next panel coming in, I'm sure that that may come through. It isn't. And so I'm going to talk about 2 barriers that we see at Cargill and ways that we're working at addressing those and how it fits into the bioeconomy. So the first one is technical. Some of it is, you can imagine, and I grew up in Kansas, not far from farms, sometimes you just don't know what you need to do. I mean, some people do, and they studied it, and they're experts, no problem. But if you think about the entire farming community, not everyone just inherently knows exactly what they should be doing for these practices, right? So that kind of technical understanding is a barrier to getting there. The other one is financial. It costs money to do that. It costs money. It doesn't come free to do it. And so one of the things that we've committed to as Cargill is having by 2030 10 million acres. I think it says up there. So partnering with farmers, partners, and customers for 10 million acres by 2030. To put that kind of in scope, to give you a feel, that equates to 5 million tons of greenhouse gas reduction, which is equivalent to taking 1 million cars off the road. So if you can think about that, that's just Cargill's commitment, right? And we have a lot of other companies like Cargill out there doing similar things, but you can imagine the impact you can have through these regen ag practices and by working together. To do that, we have to address those barriers that I talked about. In addition to the fact the landscape policy changes, there's a million programs out there. It is not easy, right? But I'm just talking about 2 things that we are working on and controlling. So one of them is the training. We've also committed to training 10 million farmers by 2030. So partnering with universities, with the government to bring education to farmers that want to come to field days to talk about the practices, learn from one another, and hosting those sessions. So 10 million farmers trained by 2030 is one of our commitments. And another one is that we're committed to paying farmers for their results and for what they do. So the money that we get to do this, it has to find its way to the farmer's pocket because they are the ones who are incurring the cost of doing it. And so that's a critical commitment, I think, in any of these programs, especially ours. So ultimately, the takeaway I want to share here is the great part is it makes sense, right? It makes sense, it can be profitable, and it is also good for what we need with the bioeconomy. The challenges are real, though, and it's going to take time to get there. It's worth it, though. Let's talk about why. So, size of the prize. You've heard a lot of people today talk about the size, the trillions of dollars. The President's Advisory Council of Science and Technology has said that right now the bioeconomy in the U.S., I think, is estimated at $400 billion, and then $950 billion if you take the indirect adjacent to that. And so if you think about what that is today and the impact, it doesn't even really, to me, capture the qualitative things like the rural development that you heard Betsy and others talking about today, right? The impact, the new access to markets for our farmers, the high-tech jobs that are created. So there's a lot of great things that happen. And what was inspiring to me to think about is when you think about the world, the McKinsey Global Institute has shared that over 60% of the products and things in this world could come from biological resources. I think there was a slide up here that Amy from Novanessus had that said almost everything. And so I think 60% is probably conservative, but that is the statistic they've thrown out there. So when you think about that, the opportunity here is huge. And I'm going to turn it back over to Josh to quickly wrap us up and talk a little bit about some of these things that are in place today coming from Blair and from some of our other facilities. Thanks.
All right, Sarah talked about the scope of the bioeconomy. Let's zoom in. So this graphic illustrates a couple areas that Cargill is impacting today. While we're really excited about our co-location partnerships and the future of the bioeconomy, thought it'd be nice to just highlight where are some areas that we engage with both from a customer standpoint and as consumers. So you see on this slide, everything from the asphalt we drive on, building materials, things like insulation and sheetrock, candles we burn, to even the apparel that we put on in the morning. Cargill is impacting the bioeconomy with solutions today, and so I'll close with just 3 quick examples. First being asphalt. So Cargill has a vegetable oil derivative that we sell into the asphalt space. We provide asphalt manufacturers an ability to recycle old asphalt, plain and simply. So it's an alternative to a petroleum-based additive, so you get all the advantages of handling and less VOCs, but also get significant greenhouse gas reductions when you think about repairing the many potholes and roads that we deal with here in the Midwest using a vegetable oil derivative. Next, if we step into our homes and think about our insulation, we had a customer years ago come to us and say, we want to eliminate formaldehyde. So formaldehyde's used in insulation to bind the glass threads together. Cargill delivered a liquid starch product, a solution to act as a bio-based glue, if you will, thereby eliminating formaldehyde. And then finally, I see Andrew in the back with Core. This is one we're super excited about. You heard from Norbert and Helm earlier today. Core is coming online in February of 2025. How's that for specific, Andrea? Early 2025. 200 miles east of here in Eddyville, Iowa. This is such a cool application because when you talk to people that may sit outside the bioeconomy from a work standpoint, you can say we're turning corn into the athleisure you're putting on in the morning to go for a run, and it immediately hits and it engages them on how we can, number one, how the bioeconomy is critical to all of us and how it impacts all of us on a daily basis. And so Core, as mentioned earlier, will bring on bio-based butane diol for use in a variety of applications. My favorite application is that athleisure market. So to close this here, we've talked about Cargill's rich history, 159 years in providing solutions across the food and bioindustrial space. But we're really proud of the 30 years we've been here in Blair, delivering for the bioeconomy. None of it could be possible without the farmer. They're at the center of everything we do in Blair. That plant doesn't operate without them. So Sarah talked about the neat programs we're working alongside them with on how we sustainably power this economy. And lastly, just highlighted a few areas here. My challenge would be to all of us in the room is how do we add things to this slide over the next couple of days, and we look forward to meeting you. Thanks.